Today we're going to start section 1.7, and this talks about variation. And this is the last section in this chapter before we have a test. So you're going to want to take the notes on this. The nice thing about this section is that you've already seen variation, and it's particularly nicer to deal with than the word problems that we were dealing with before. So there's three types of variation that we talk about. The first one is called direct variation. And so y varies directly as x if there exists a real number k called the constant of variation or the constant of proportionality such that y equals k times x. Big thing here, y varies directly as x means that you are using multiplication. Notice since the y is written first, y goes there at the beginning of the equation. X is written at the end, so x is what's being multiplied by k. So for example, if they said m varies directly as w, we would write it as m equals k times w. The k is always going to be there. The other variables are interchangeable, but whichever one is written first, that's what goes first in the equation, and whatever's written at the end is what goes after the k. And since it says varies directly, that's what tells us it's multiplication. So direct variation is multiplication. Inverse variation means you're doing division. So y varies inversely as the nth power of x if there exists a real number k such that y equals k divided by x to the nth. Now that doesn't mean that x has to be to a certain power, it just allows for the possibility of it. Again, the most important thing, inversely means that you are using division. You'll notice y came first in the sentence, and that's what's first in the equation. X came at the end of the equation, and so that's what's being divided by. Inverse variation, you still have that letter k there. That is your constant of proportionality or constant of variation, but since it's inverse variation, you're dividing by it. The last type of variation is called joint variation, and that just means that multiple things can happen at the same time. Let m and n be real numbers. Y varies jointly as the nth power of x and the mth power of z if there exists a real number k such that y equals k times x to the nth times z to the nth. Joint variation just means that multiple things can be happening in the same problem. You're still always going to have that k there. So let's talk about how you solve variation problems. Steps for solving the variation problems. First thing you need to do is pick the formula. Okay? Is it direct variation? Is it inverse variation? Is it joint variation? It will always tell you in the problem. Second thing you do, you plug in the known variables and solve for k, your constant of proportionality or constant of variation. Then you plug k back into the original formula. Let's look at an example. So write a general formula to describe the variation. Y varies directly with x, y equals 2 when x equals 10. So the first thing we need to do is pick our formula. Since it says varies directly, we know that we're looking at y equals k times x. Sorry, let me get rid of that, guys. So we have y equals k times x. Now we need to plug in the known variables and solve for k. Okay, I know that y equals 2, k is what I'm solving for, and x equals 10. To get k by itself, we'll divide both sides by 10. That gives us that k equals 1/5. And then step 3, you plug k into the original formula. So we'll write this as y equals 1/5 times x. And that's your final answer. That's what you're looking for. Y varies directly with x, y equals 2 and x equals 10. So the general formula is y equals 1/5 times x. All right, as another example, let's say that f varies inversely with d squared. f equals 10 when d equals 5. Okay. Pick our formula. Since it is inverse variation, we know that we're going to be using division. So we'll write down f equals k divided by d squared. For step 2, we'll plug in our variables. We know that f equals 10. K is what we're looking for, so we'll leave it alone. D equals 5, so that's going to look like 5 squared. Now getting k by itself, this becomes 10 equals k divided by 25. To undo division, you multiply both sides by 25. That gives you that k equals 250. Plugging that value back in, we have f equals 250 over d squared. So that's our general formula for when f varies inversely with d squared. F equals 10 when d equals 5. Okay, one last example. We're going to write the general formula for a variation that m varies directly with the square of d and inversely with the square root of x. M equals 24 when x equals 9 and d equals 4. So this one's fun because it's combining two of them. M is written first, so that's what's going to go first in our equation. M equals. You're always going to have k there. Since it says directly with the square of d, that means times d squared. Then it says inversely with the square root of x, so we know we're going to divide by the square root of x. We've got our formula. Now we'll plug values in. So step 2. M is 24 equals, k is what we're always looking for, so we're just going to leave it as k. D is 4, so I know I'm going to put 4 squared up top, and then underneath of that, the square root of 9. That's just setting it up. Now we need to solve for k. So this is going to look like 24 equals 16k divided by 3. We've got a fraction. We need to get rid of that. We'll times both sides by 3. That gives us that 24 times 3 is 72 equals 16k. To get rid of that 16, we'll divide both sides by 16. K equals 4.5. So our general formula, just plugging that in, M equals 4.5 d squared divided by the square root of x. And that's your final answer. So your homework is going to be on page 112, numbers 4 through 14 even. This is due Thursday, April 12th. If you are going on the Hamilton trip, you might want to get it done now and just leave it on the desk. If you're not going on the Hamilton trip, then you can work on this tomorrow during class. But you all need to have this turned in before you leave for the chemistry trip on Thursday. If you're going to be going on the chemistry trip, please make sure you pick up a copy of the study guide from the sub. I'm leaving that on my desk. And this is just covering sections 1.5 through 1.7. So that's going to be the transformations, the word problems, and the variation. This study guide is going to be due Monday. Just kidding, we're not here Monday. Tuesday, April 17th. Okay. And your test is going to be on Wednesday. I did not spell that right. April 18th. All right, see you Friday.